Do you ever look at your kids and wonder why, in a house full of toys, they can't seem to find anything to do? Do you find yourself battling against screen time, but then feel out of ideas for how to get your kid engaged with something else? Well, you are going to love my guest today. Beth is the creator of the popular Instagram account Days with Grey. She's a former teacher and she promotes play based learning for young kids. And she has got tons of easy, fun, and really engaging activities for kids that also give parents a break. I can't wait for you to meet Beth. All right. So, welcome, Beth. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Well, let's get started. I know I already gave you a little introduction, but you're the expert on you. So, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your business? Because I think you're such a great fit for my audience, which is parents of toddlers and preschoolers. And you've got so many great resources for this age group. So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your business.
Thank you. Well, I started as a teacher. So I'll say early education has always, in early childhood, has always been in my heart. And I started as a teacher. And shortly after being pregnant with my second, we were moving. And that was when I decided to make the change to stay home. And as I was home, we would be in the room with some toys. My oldest was about to turn 1. And I just remember thinking, wait a second, like I keep hearing kids know how to play, and I know they know how to play, but our day feels so long. What
What
is
are we going to do
happening?
all day?
Yeah, like aren't you supposed to just play? And through a lot of more research on how younger children play and how to develop those skills early and make play part of the habit, it really started kickstarting some ideas, right? And one thing that I learned very early on is how a child's attention span, right? So yeah, they might know how to play, but it's really just double their age or +1 their age. And so as I'm starting to learn all of these parts and pieces of how toddlers play and how preschoolers play and how to spend my day, I knew that other families were probably looking for the same thing. So I merged the two and started Days with Grey.
Oh, that's so cool. I think I originally found you, this was like years ago, but you started doing something called breakfast invitations, which I thought would be really cool for my audience to kind of learn about because I know that we all struggle with mornings, right? Getting our kids going, getting our kids organized. Mornings are tight especially if you've got to go to work or get your kids to school, like you got to get stuff done and you want it to be you want it to be easy, you want it to be enjoyable. So tell us a little bit about breakfast invitations and how that kind of put you on the Instagram map, maybe?
So I am not a morning person, and I am not afraid to say that. I like when I'm forced to be up early. I don't mind that, like, I've gotten so much done, but it was hard. You wake up, I stayed at home, and the second you open your eyes, if someone's not actually waking you up, the second you open your eyes, there's bottles to put in the warmer, or children to feed, or diapers to change, and especially in those earlier years. So what I learned pretty quickly is that although I wanted to like just say, okay, just go watch a show, we were never able to like really turn it off. But when we did turn it off, it felt like nobody knew what to do with themselves, right? Like my kids were like, okay, well, now what? And they were kind of cranky from having to turn it off. And I was kind of cranky because they were kind of cranky and we really weren't getting anywhere. So that's when I put my teacher hat on and I was like, you know what? What if there was something fun for them to come down to at the breakfast table that they can think a little bit more creatively, but I would also be in the same space because I'm in the kitchen prepping breakfast and making my hot tea. And so I started creating these simple play prompts that take 2 to 5 minutes the night before using things I've already had, like painter's tape, markers, simple things, and creating an activity for them to come down to. So in the morning, when we all come down, they go to their breakfast invitation. I can make breakfast. And as a joke, I called it a breakfast invitation because there's something called an invitation to play. And that's basically like an education term for a play prompt. And I was like, well, this is a breakfast invitation. I invite you to play during breakfast. And it was just a massive hit. Every Sunday, we still meet on Instagram stories and I'll set up an activity for Monday morning and everyone tunes in on Sunday night so that they have something to go for Monday morning. It just completely transformed our days.
That is so cool. So yes, because I know the go-to is obviously screen time, right?
Mhm.
But now I feel like the way with all the streaming services, like in YouTube and stuff, it just everything runs into another thing. So I mean,
Mhm.
even I find myself saying, okay, one more show or turn it off after this episode. But then it's almost like kids just don't even know when it ends. I mean, sure, there's credits and whatever, but it just rolls so seamlessly into the next one. And turning it off, it is such a struggle. And we say, whenever we turn it off, we say, like, you need to unlock yourself. Okay, unlock.
I
Let's
like that.
unlock you. Yeah,
I
to
like
get you.
that. That's funny. And that's exactly it. So how I like to structure my day, no matter what age of my children, whether they're toddlers, preschoolers, or big kids, I like to think of myself first and where I struggle. So for me, I struggled in the morning. And so I needed a solution. But then I also crashed at 3 o'clock. And I don't know if it's the internal clock of being a teacher in me, but I also needed to like step back that late afternoon. So that's when we moved their screen time. And that's because it worked for our family. I had to think ahead, like where am I not being the best parent I can be, and how can I fill in the gaps? And so for me, it was like, okay, the breakfast. I don't really want to start the day with TV. I'd rather start with some sort of creative play. Okay, I'm going to do a breakfast invitation. Okay, midday, I am toast. I
Yeah.
just need to check out. And even in the early years, I remember taking the couch cushions like out of the back because I was pregnant then with my third, and like I would close my eyes as they would watch a show. And so those early years are hard, but if you think a lot about what your needs are as a parent and structure your day around that, it will be life changing.
I love that. Yes, parents have to put themselves first because we have to take care of everybody else, right? So if we're totally depleted, then that's not going to work for anybody in the long run. Okay, so tell me kind of about how you get your kids prepped for school. So it's the beginning of the school year now. So what are some things that you do to help keep your family organized in terms of like, all right, we got to get to school tomorrow? Because I see with my kids, I'm always like, make your lunch the night before. I mean,
Mhm.
granted, my kids are older, but it just never happens somehow. And so what do you
Yeah.
do to kind of keep things organized in your family?
I am a huge fan of checklists, just, that pen and paper checklist. And I'm going to share something in a minute. But what I noticed with that is in terms of getting out the door, our bus comes at like 6:50. And so this is, yes, I have older kids, but the same concept has been since they were little. In that morning, even if you have socks in a basket and you have shoes in a basket and you have, your backpack on the hook, for some reason getting those items seems to be like just this huge task, and it creates a lot of stress. And then it's like the sock bin has one sock, and where's the other sock? Well, is it upstairs? So I'm like, okay, how do we solve this problem? And so instead, I came up with school pile. And what I decided is I was like, I just need to reverse engineer this. And before we go upstairs, everybody needs to have their pile on the floor. Now, we don't have a cubby space. Some homes have cubby. We do not. And so for us, it's literally on the kitchen floor, pile for each child. And I made a Canva template. I can share it with you just so families can just have this. So the night before, Will's like, I got to get my backpack, put your backpack on the floor. I got to get my snack. Boom. Sneakers too. Yes, our sneakers are as you walk out the door. I don't need to be like, where's my shoe at 6:40 in the morning,
Right.
right? Boom, they're right there. Socks, boom, they're right there. Water bottle. Did you fill your water bottle? Yes. Boom. Okay. Now you can move into grabbing up ice pop or whatever it is that they want to do before they go to bed. This has been life changing. And I heard from so many followers that they also use this template. And it's just like night and day of being smooth to get things out ready just to go but that morning.
I love that. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that with our audience too, because it seems like such a simple thing, but checklists really are so important and they're so helpful and kids love them too. It's so funny.
Mhm.
My daughter started sixth grade, and so we got her an agenda and really trying to help her be independent, but try to be organized with her work that she has to do. And she said, Mom, since I've been doing these checklists, it feels so good when I check one of the boxes.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, I said it does. It
It
feels so good.
It does feel so good. And when we talk a little bit more about the younger ages, around 3 and 4 and 5, we want to make sure the list isn't so large, right? So that this is a list, this is my 7-year-old, but for a 3-year-old, we might think of what are just the 3 things we need to get done. And really, what I like to do in the early years is I actually just get a piece of paper and we make the list together because it makes them more part of the process, especially in those early years. They don't really want, they're so independent, right? And
Yeah.
so, I would go through with my preschooler at the time, like, what do we need to brush our teeth? Let's write teeth and, write teeth and put a check mark. And then I'd say, okay, and you need to get your bag, and we'd draw it out. And then he just had this checklist. And look, there's nothing better than either a dry erase marker or a marker, being totally in control of that and checking it off when you're done. So that's one tip. Another tip with the early ages is that you can do the simple checklist. That works great. But the other idea with the younger ages is if you have magnetic tiles, something I like to do is if I take 3 magnetic tiles and on a post-it note, I like draw teeth, post-it note, draw, your breakfast, and on a post-it note, draw, put your shirt on or something, get
Yeah.
dressed. And then on a piece of paper saying 1, 2, 3, where they can manipulate the order and they can decide, okay, I want to brush my teeth first, then I want to, and you connect it, then I want to get dressed, and then I'm going to do this. It again puts the ownership back on them. And I really like that idea as well.
Yeah, I love that. The more control you can give them, the better, right? Because they want to be independent, right? Exactly. They want some control. They want to show you they can do it. So
Yep.
if you're trying to get out the door and you've got to take them to school, maybe you have to bring a snack. They want to bring their lovey for nap time or whatever it is. Maybe it's just a couple things, but if you can have them be responsible for it, they're going to be so proud of themselves
Mhm.
once you set up that system, and then something easy that they can check the box and do, or something they can put in an order, and then you can spend your time, instead of trying to get them to do things, you spend your time praising how well they did them because you've given them a system, and then they feel really empowered.
Yeah, I love that, especially, and it might take some training, right? It's not like you just hand your preschooler this list and you're like, okay, there you go. But really, like the first few weeks, it may be like walking with them. Oh, wait, where did you, and having fun too. So it might be like, is your shirt in your underwear drawer? Let me check, just to kind of lighten the load a little bit of it not feeling so. And I know we don't always have the patience to like make it fun. But if we kind of try that instead of the constant, like,
Nagging.
regimented way, it's like it's less exhausting just to have more fun with it on the front end than it would be to ask the same question 20 times. So,
Yeah.
yeah, really kind of walking them through of like, okay, this is a checklist, sure, but like, what does a checklist look like? And I think parents, I think now we have such a better sense of these kind of life skills and these time management skills than when I was growing up. I remember, I just wasn't handing in my homework and my parents were so upset with me, but I don't feel like anybody actually took the time to be like, oh, wait, you're just like a little overwhelmed. Here's how to organize your life. And I think if I had that, I probably would have handed in my homework.
Yeah, you need to have that checklist of like homework's in your folder kind of thing, and you just get used to doing that every night. Yeah, you're right. You're right. I think we do have a lot more focus on that. And especially it's because we can see how much our kids want to have control. And this is a lot of what I teach in my program too, which is like, yeah, they want some control. So like, let's learn how to give it to them in an age appropriate way. And then it becomes over time a win-win for everybody once you kind of get them in the habit.
Yeah, and I can say that from like having big kids. Now, it's funny because from my experience, older kids are more reluctant to help out, but at the same time, the routines are so there. And if you're not going to school that day, you watch TV at 3, or now they like Nintendo, that they will still at 10, 9, and 7, like they still will play with magnetic tiles. They will still build with like the train tracks. They read a lot too, but they understand how to use their downtime because we put all of that stuff in practice and the expectations was already there like their whole life. So it really helps with the whole like, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, because it's just what they've always done or had to do.
Yeah, you're right. You're so right. You see the power that having those routines in place, you see how that benefits them over time. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. And they love screens. So I'm not ever going to pretend that like my kids are not
Yeah.
into Nintendo is number one for them. But if they have a routine that they know that it's only on weekends or at 3 on those school days, they know the system and they know what to do with their time.
Another cool thing that I have seen you share before, which are some cool ideas to get your kids to talk about school and kind of think about their school day in like a unique way. And I remember this so much when my kids were young, and I mean, honestly, even now, but it's like, where you say like, okay, how was your day? Like, what'd you do today? And then kids are like, it was good, fun. Okay. You get nothing out of them. So you have some creative ways to get kids to kind of open up a little bit more.
Yeah, I do. I have 2 ways. Actually, on Instagram, I have one way that's saved on the feed, and that's just 9 other ways to say how was your day. An example of that was yesterday I was talking to my first grader, and again, I crash at 3. So I was like just laying down. I was like, "Gosh, I had a really like long hard day, And he's like, "I had a hard day too." And I was like, "Oh, wow, like see how naturally that came out." But if I said, "How was your day?" he'd be like, "Good." And then I think he might have asked me, like, why was your day hard? And I explained a few things of what I did. And then I said, well, why was your day hard? And got some things that I probably wouldn't have gotten out of. So that's the first way, is just different ways to rephrase, how was your day?
Well, I love
Um,
that too, because sometimes I can tell my kid, like I can tell that something's a little bit off.
mhm.
And, so I'm like, how was your day? And it's like, fine, but I can kind of feel that they're a little bit quiet. So I love that approach, even if you hadn't had a hard or exhausting day, just to even kind of
Yeah.
say it like that
And
as a way to kind of make a connection and open up that dialogue.
yeah, exactly. And then, even the ninth suggestion on that is just like, don't say nothing at all. I don't always need someone in my face, so they probably don't either. And when I pick up my middle child, a lot of times I just like keep the radio off and just wait for him to talk if he wants to. And he's kind of adjusting mood too, right? Like sometimes they get mad and you're like, I don't even know why you're mad, but it's because they had like they had a day that they were just really on it and attentive to the needs of the classroom. And so, as parents, we're the first that they're just gonna
Yeah, we're gonna get
let it
it.
all go. So sometimes like I don't even really want to talk because I know I'm gonna say the wrong thing. So it's just kind of like
Yeah.
driving in silence. And I think that's important too, to recognize that silence is a good time to also calm your nervous system. The other way is would you rather questions, which has been another thing really funny, is how they've become part of like a Days with Gray thing and back to school. So would you rather have a teacher with a magic wand, or would you rather, go to lunch, the cafeteria on a magic carpet? Just
Okay.
fun, super silly things that again is so much better than like, what's your teacher's name? Are you excited to go back to school? Which slips out of our mouths because like that's just all we ever grew up
Yeah,
with.
right. But there are so many more creative ways to actually like engage with them, and some information will accidentally come out during asking this question.
Definitely. Absolutely. It's funny how when we calm ourselves down, like what we can actually really talk about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And you talked about driving the car, which I think is another great time too for kids to talk. At least I found that in my family with my girls, because something about not looking at each other, right? You're sitting at the dinner table and you're like, "How was your day? How was your
Mhm.
day?" It's just like maybe a little more not intimidating, but just like I don't know, so direct. In
Mhm.
the car, it's kind of easier to have that chit chat and not have it feel like an interrogation.
That's such a good point. I completely agree with that.
Especially as you start driving kids around, like multiple kids, and then you hear the conversations with the friends. But that is everything. That's where you get all the tea about everything.
Oh man, so much, so much. We don't carpool often, but when there is another friend in the car, I'm like, you have to, yeah, you also have to like, oh my gosh, you want to react to all of it because some of the things that are coming out, you're like, oh no.
So
But
true.
yeah, I agree. If you want to know what's going on in your child's life, tell the other parent, you'll pick them up because you'll learn a lot.
Bringing it back to like our younger kids. So I did find something on your website related to bedtime. So we've talked a lot about daytime routines and structures and new creative ways to talk to kids, but you do have a great bedtime tip too. So are you open to sharing that with my audience?
Yeah, of course. And bedtime, everyone has to do what feels right for them. You're the sleep expert, so you know better than I. But for me, this is a great strategy for when you are sleeping in separate rooms and you have a routine where you are saying goodnight and then they're like, but I need another cup of water, but I need to, and they continue to come out. For me personally, again, remember, I'm not a morning person. I'm also like, I was home with them. So I always said I worked 7 to 7 and I needed to really stay true to those hours to let myself decompress.
So important. I feel like so many of us fall into like momming 24/7. So I love that you literally thought of it like this is what I'm on. That's a long ass work day, by the way.
It's a long work day. And the thing is too, I mean, it's not a real tried and true, right? Like there's no way I could seriously shut off at 7 and there's no way I can seriously make sure nobody peeps until 7 a.m. But if that's kind of like in my head as the goal, it can help things like run a little bit more smoothly. But you have to be a little mature for this technique. So this would be after you have kids established in a bedtime routine, but they continue to come out. I like to do something called a tuck and ticket, and I have a marker and a piece of paper here, and I'm literally just writing.
Three
Yeah,
year, 3 years old, 3 years old, or you think older than that?
I think okay. I'd say let's say 3, but it just depends on your child's maturity. But something tangible is really helpful. So I just write on a piece of paper tuck in ticket and I draw like a little bed, like stick figure, 2 seconds. I like this better than buying something on Amazon that says the same thing because it feels so organic, right? It's like, okay, here's your tuck in ticket.
When the kid can help make it too, right? I mean,
Totally. Yeah. And that's the thing. You can let this kind of evolve however you want to. And it's like, here's your tuck in ticket. Oh, you know why it's not so much 3 is because this was when my kids were able to start staying in their room and maybe not turning the light out right away. So maybe it was like you work 7 to 7, where in the early years, lights go out, kids go to bed, right? But
right.
then you will see as your kids get older, they're like, can I just read a book? Right.
Yeah.
And that's where the maturity comes in. So it's like, fine, you can stay in your room. And then when you're ready for your final tuck in, you can use your tuck in ticket. And what I like about this is like they actually like bring you the ticket. They can only use it once and you can hole punch it or you can check it off or you can do whatever you want. And then you're just like, okay, good night. Now, here's where like the bigger part comes. If you're going to establish this routine, then you really need to figure out what you're going to do when they try to come out again after the tuck-in ticket, because they are going to, because who doesn't want to like just kind of see is mom or dad like really serious about the tuck-in ticket?
Of course. Especially nowadays, it's their job. I always say that it's their job.
Yeah, there's no perfect angels here that are just like, okay, good night, mom. But again, it's a routine that you can establish. What helped me is that when they would come back out of the room, I would just take their hand and I would walk them back. And again, depending on your kid's different temperaments, if you have that child that just needs to tell you to do something before they can shut their eyes, I have one in particular that comes to mind in my house. I know he'll go to bed as soon as I get him that water bottle with ice. So they might use the tuck and ticket, but then if they're calling your name for something, there is some leeway. But I would really know going into it. Okay, I wouldn't even tell them that's an option. In your head they might come out, but you are just establishing the boundaries. This
Yeah.
is a tuck in ticket. You may come get me when you are ready to get tucked in, but you can only use it once a night.
Yeah. I would even like the idea of taking that, maybe like making some copies of it and then taking the ticket. So every night it's gone. It's not even like,
Totally. Or maybe even like you drop it in a jar
yeah.
or whatever you do, but definitely it has to be that physical handover of like, here you go. Okay, thank you. Done. And then you have to stick with it. Like you've already given me your tuck-in ticket.
And what I really like about this too, especially like this time of year, is I am seeing, and this is a natural thing where if parents have been with kids all summer and then all of a sudden kids are going back to school, there could be a little bit more of that feeling of separation anxiety, especially if the parents are working, if the kids are in school. Evenings can be tight if you're not picking your kid up till 5 and then bedtime's at 7:30. It's not a ton of time. So there's could be a little bit of a feeling of just wanting to see mom kind of one more time. Certainly you don't want it to be a slippery slope, but if you do have a kid who has established already good sleep habits and you're starting to see some of that, especially this like back to school time of year, I think this is a good tactic as long as it doesn't lead to things going haywire. But it's nice to have that kind of one more option.
Yeah, and you just reminded me too. There's something that we've done for a while is that before they go to bed, I say like, tell me three things, and I tell them three things, and it could be anything. And I prefer this over what was something good, what was something bad, what made you sad or whatever. Because when I ask those specific questions, it kind of makes you feel like you're supposed to have one of each. But I'm just like, well, tell me three things. And again, like you say, when they feel like they haven't seen you or there is some, more time with the parent needed, it really helps them learn a little bit about your day. So my three things may be like, oh, I had this great video call with someone who helps families with sleep. Isn't that so neat that like families have someone they can go to if they're looking to establish sleep routines? Or I might say, oh gosh, I went to go to the grocery store and I forgot my check card. That was so frustrating for me. And then, talking through like the emotions I felt from those three things. And I think that that's a really sweet way of giving them a little insight into your day. And then they can tell you three things. And for each child, they would tell me three different kinds of things. Like the way they would interpret that tell me three things was very different, but very unique to their personalities.
That's so cool. Yeah, that's kind of like what I teach at the end of a bedtime routine. I teach families to do what we call the grand finale. Doesn't matter what it is. It's just that at the end of the bedtime routine, the same thing happens every night. And then kids know after that, it's like lights out, like we're done, the day's over. It could be like the world's greatest hug or like a 10 kiss countdown. Like you kiss them all over their face 10 times, they kiss you and they count, or depending on their age. Or talk time is another great one. And so this is a great way to even kind of structure that talk time, which is like asking, just tell me three things and I'll tell you three things. That's super cute. We would sing. I would sing You Are My Sunshine. That would be our list.
That is so sweet. You just reminded me, my oldest, he used to say, how many tucks do you want? And he'd be like, okay, 10 tucks. So it'd be like one, two. And then the last, when you get to 10, it'd be like 10, and that would be another grand finale example. I love that.
People have like the funniest ones, and it always like comes up organically usually, and it's
Yeah.
like sometimes a crazy thing. Parents will be like, is it weird that my kid wants me to count to three and then throw them into the bed? I'm like, no, that's actually kind of normal. Like I hear that kind
Yeah.
of stuff. Like kids like that. It's super fun. So it doesn't matter what it is, it's just having that thing where they know like it's the last thing.
And bedtime better than I do, but I also think too, getting them like the room in the mood is huge too. Like 30 minutes before it's actually going to bed, the lights are lower. That's one thing that my husband and I differ on. All the lights are on, like the whole light's on. And he's like going to the bathroom, and like I'm like, you gotta kind of set the stage a little bit.
Well, this has been so wonderful to talk to you, Beth. Thank you. Tell everyone where they can find you. And I'm going to link to all these great resources that Beth mentioned in the notes. So certainly look there too. But where can people find you?
Yeah, thank you. It's Days with Grey, Grey. I'm Days with Grey on social handles, Pinterest, Facebook, Instagram, and then everything is housed on the blog, which is dayswithgrey.com. And that's all one word.
Yes, and your website is amazing. I
Thank
want
you.
to also mention one thing that you have on your website, which looks super cool right now, are these like seasonal activities that you have for kids. Rolling into fall and winter, you've got some great activities that can especially help when we're going to be inside more as it starts to get cold. And then you're really thinking, okay, what am I supposed to do with the kids when it's snowing, when it's freezing? So some great weekend activities too that people should check out.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like during seasons, we're bombarded with like our feed having tons of great ideas. So I was like, well, what if we just take all those ideas and I put them in a deck of cards for families to just like have as an easy, quick resource. So, like, this is an example of one idea, shaving cream pumpkins. That's
Oh,
like a lot of
cool.
fun. Yeah. And then that way the families know, like, okay, this is the idea. Here's what I need to know. Here's materials. A pro tip: set up conversation starters, kind of like what we talked about earlier. And then here's more ways to play this, because you're not just going to do it once, but you are going to just ride that idea out until
If they liked it, here's like other ways to
exactly.
stretch it. So,
Exactly.
so people can actually they go and order those cards. Like you send them the physical cards.
Or PDF, you can choose. You can get PDF you can get physical or you can get physical and PDF. You can choose. It's a 3 down, 3 drop down. And then I even put it all in a calendar for you if you're somebody that's like, I'm just overwhelmed. I just need somebody. It's kind of like cooking. I'm like, just tell me what I'm going to cook for dinner tonight. I don't know. So it's like, okay, oh, fourth Tuesday.
Let's do
Let's
this.
fall leaf graph. Yeah. Just to take it away. We don't need to make any more decisions.
Well, I know that you've made so many families' lives easier with this conversation, just knowing that they have this resource. So yes, I will make sure to note all of your handles on all the channels and then your blog too, which is amazing.
That's great. I always enjoy talking to you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for being here.